Welcome back to Epic Rides, and welcome to our very first special two-part Canada Day extravaganza. This time around, I want to give all the love to one of my favorite places on Earth and spend the weekend riding around town, exploring a couple of must-see destinations, some killer fireworks, the fair, a car show, and so much more. So thank you for joining me for part 1 on my Lac du Bonnet Canada Day adventure.
Welcome to a very special edition of Epic Rides Canada Day. We are going to be heading from Winnipeg to Lac du Bonnet. I'm staying in Beausejour, and we're going to do some filming. We're going to do some filming this weekend. Looking forward to it. Got a whole bunch of great places to stop, so stick around and check it out.
This would seriously be the most boring video of all time if all I was doing was bumbling around town on my bike, and I wanted to make a route out of it somehow. So I decided to leave from my home in Winnipeg, do a quarter of an orbit around the perimeter highway, before heading east on the 15 and then north on the 302 to Beausejour, where due to spectacularly poor planning on my end, was the only place I could find a hotel room during the long weekend. Travel tip number 1, friends. If you know you're planning on visiting Lac du Bonnet on a long weekend, book a room earlier than the Wednesday before you leave. Not that there's anything wrong with the Superior Inn in Beausejour, however, you're now faced with having to commute to Lac du Bonnet along the 44 to Seddon's Corner, before heading north on Murder Deer Alley, the 214. During the day, the 214 really isn't too bad, but you have to keep your head on a swivel, as I've had numerous deer try to ambush me from the ditches during the day. But dusk and after dark is when things get really hairy. Sadly, I don't have any footage of the insane ride back to the hotel after filming the fireworks, but good lord, it was a puckering experience at times. Thankfully, the guy in the truck in front of me took one for the team and broadsided a kamikaze buck who presumably had recently lost his job, his wife, and his dog and decided to meet Servant Jesus via Ford F-150. Thanks, guy in the truck. I'm really glad you're okay, and I'm really sorry about your truck. Anyways, after checking into my hotel, I jumped back on my bike and headed east on the 44 to Seddon's Corner, and then north on the 214 before hitting the 11 highway briefly and arriving in town.
This is me, run 12. So this works. What do we got here? Oh, this is a lovely room. Beautiful.
Lac du Bonnet is generally a fairly quiet community. Even though its population swells like Vincent D'Onofrio before taking on the role of Private Pile in Full Metal Jacket during the summer months, it's still welcoming and a child-friendly place to take the family for a visit. Even during what is arguably the busiest weekend of the season, you can still find a place to eat, room on the beach, and a ton of things to do. Just don't forget to book your room well in advance. Somebody with more business sense than I should really open another hotel in town, as I think it would be hugely successful. Having arrived in town with plenty of time to check out the sights, I met up with my good friends the Mitchell family, who suggested that we go check out the museum before heading up to Blueberry Rock Trail. The Lac du Bonnet District Museum collects and preserves artifacts integral to the area's history, from prehistoric and early pioneer times to the industries which contributed to the region's development through to the present. A visit to the museum allows visitors to discover the stories of those whose visions and ideas created the Lac du Bonnet area through mining discoveries and brick manufacturing, which contributed to the construction of railway lines and hydroelectric generating stations. Located where the prairie meets the rugged boreal shield, Lac du Bonnet is a place where industries collided. Plentiful trees led to timber harvesting and pulp production. Early residents who settled the land turned to hunting, fishing, trapping, and farming to survive, while the aviation industry found this to be the perfect place for their daring bush pilots to venture deeper into the untamed wilderness, further opening up the region for development. The museum also boasts exhibits and photo displays focusing on these industries and people, including over 27 nationalities who came together to establish the area known today, while exploring the museum building itself, which is a fully restored, handcrafted, stacked log cabin. During our visit, I was lucky enough to meet with the president of the Lac du Bonnet Historical Society, Terry Tottle, who shared with me the history of the museum, the area, and how Lac du Bonnet was actually born, which turns out was not at all how I explained it in the very first Epic Rides episode. Oops. The history of the town, so maybe we could talk a little bit about the history of Lac du Bonnet, where did it get started, how did it get started? Instead of the thing what I did with our Epic Rides where I was just making things up, if you're going to know what actually happened.
Okay, well that's, okay, the urban myth, and which is recorded in our history book on page 1, is an article written in 1934 by W.D. Halliday, who reminisces about the history of Lac du Bonnet, and the first line is, Lac du Bonnet, indigenous people told that how Lac du Bonnet got its name was La Vérendrye threw his cap into and called it Bonnet Lake or Lac du Bonnet, but there's no historical reference or you can read La Vérendrye's diaries. He doesn't even mention Lac du Bonnet, and on any of his maps. It just draws a straight line of the Winnipeg River, the Maurepas River, from Lake of the Woods to Lake Winnipeg. So there's nothing in La Vérendrye that sticks out. He might not even have come here. Like he camped at Barrier Bay, and then his journals, he has what appear to be snowshoe prints on his maps. So it's believed by some historians that that it wouldn't be Pierre, but his son and his nephew would have snowshoed to the Rousseau River into the Red River and come via that way. And when he established Fort Maurepas at where Fort Alexander is today, he would have come the other way down the Red River through Nelly Creek and established the post that way. So there's some, we're not sure exactly that he actually did come by this part of the river at all, but because it's on page 1 of our history book and anybody reads it online or reads anything about Lac du Bonnet, that's the first thing that's plucked out. And
I think it's the first thing that you see. I did some research again when I was doing Epic Rides, and I wanted to mention the town founding, and I thought, oh, that's surely to goodness there'll be some history, and I think that was the first thing I found too, and I was like, oh, well, that would be true.
We'll copy that, Richard.
Yeah.
And it's
so I just wanted to, however many people watch that video.
But the first reference of the name being used is by a French voyageur by the name of Joseph Durand in 1760. So in his journal, he mentions the bonnet portages, the first, second, and third bonnet portages. So that's the first recorded name, bonnet, and they're on various maps from 1819 on. It's called Bonnet Lake or Cap Lake. And it carries on, and that's how Lac du Bonnet started, was in the fur trade, and then Walter Wardrop, who was a Scotsman who came from Whitemouth to help establish the Lac du Bonnet Mining Developing Company's brickworks. He registered the name Lac du Bonnet, and we got the first post office in 1900. So the name Lac du Bonnet stuck on the settlement because of being registered with the post office department. So that's basically
that's where it started. Suitably impressed with the museum, and after very much enjoying my chat with Terry, I hopped back on the mighty Strom and crossed Provincial Road 313 before heading north on Blueberry Rock Drive for a short ride on gravel track to Blueberry Rock Trail. Blueberry Rock Trail is a short 1.8-ish kilometer loop that features a gorgeous blend of boreal forest, a rock quarry, and the Canadian Shield. Close to town and an easy hike, this is a great adventure for people of all ages and abilities. The trail winds its way through boreal forest before climbing gentle grades of granite outcroppings. If you're worried about these minor climbs, or just happen to have a mosquito fetish, you can enter the trail through the exit, where you'll be treated to a gauntlet of dense swarms of homicidal mosquitoes, as well as an endless sea of poison ivy, lying in wait along the edges of the trail, praying that you will take a single misstep so you can spend the rest of your vacation trying to peel your skin off in a vain attempt to stop the incessant itching. I mean, I suppose you could simply wear bug spray and stick to the groomed and poison ivy-free trail, but then, where's the fun in that? And more importantly, then what would I bitch about? Holy, surrounded by poison ivy, attacked by mosquitoes, being swarmed. It's a beautiful place for a visit. You should come. Ah! Look at the poison ivy. Here they're dragging me through. As I was saying, as you slowly climb up the granite outcroppings, you come across a beautiful picnic area, and then a lookout tower, which affords spectacular views of the area. I would have loved to have put my drone up here, but the trail itself is less than 1 kilometer from the airport, and Transport Canada really doesn't like it when you try to fly a drone in their airspace. Fair enough, I suppose, but annoying that I couldn't get a view from above. Oh well, one day I'll have a budget, and then I'll hire a helicopter to take me to get that shot, but not today. Today I'm gonna head down Mosquito Alley back to the parking lot, then to Drifters for dinner, a stop at the fair, and then I'm gonna go watch me some fireworks. After leaving Blueberry Rock Trail, I headed over to Drifters with the Mitchells, where we had a fantastic meal. I highly recommend the pizza, and the clubhouse is outstanding as well. With time to kill before the fireworks began, and after securing myself a sweet spot on the town dock to put the drone up, we headed over to the fair and amused ourselves by attaching GoPros to the Mitchells boys and Skylar, and sending them off to go on all the rides that I'm far too wussy to get on. The fair's pretty fun during the day, but it really comes to life at night, with bright lights and just a hint of danger as the rides spin and dance in the twilight to the beat of bad Euro dance music at full volume, as the smells of fresh mini donuts, machine oil, and humanity permeates the air. Soon enough, it was time to make our last stop after an action-packed day, and my favorite part of the trip so far, the fireworks. The fireworks are put on by the local Lions Club, who work tirelessly through the year to raise funds for what is arguably the best rural community fireworks display in the province. I was lucky enough to be invited onto the main dock to fly my drone around during the display, and other than the constant fear of a firework acting as a land-to-air missile and knocking my drone out of the sky, the display made me feel like a kid again. Absolutely blown away in wonder and excitement as the show went on. After the display, it was time for sleep. And so it was down Deer Alley, aka the 214, and back to Beausejour for a good night's rest before heading into town the following day for another bunch of activities. That's it, that's all for part 1 of the Lac du Bonnet Canada Day special, folks. Thank you for joining me, and please remember to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on the next episode. Speaking of which, make sure you come back next time where I get distracted by fudge at the farmer's market and we go visit one of the coolest sites in Manitoba, Old Pinawa Dam, which definitely has a post-apocalyptic vibe to it. Plus, we're going to swing by the car show and even stop in at the local talent show to listen to some tunes. If you've been waiting for a reason to visit Lac du Bonnet, look no further than our Canada Day special. Until next time, explore often and explore local. Peace.